How likely is a Canadian real estate crash in 2021? Considering all the news we hear about new sales record and prices climbing ever higher, is a real estate crash even possible? Some would say the conditions are perfect for a housing market crash, the biggest one yet. The Canadian housing crash. Always around the corner, but yet never seeming to materialize. People write and talk about derailing of the Canadian real estate gravy train so often that it's almost like the population is secretly rooting for it to happen. So then, what about this video? Is the Canadian housing market going to crash in 2021? Households are more indebted now than they were back in 1990, which was the last time the Canadian real estate bubble burst due to a recession. While debt levels are far higher in Canada today than they were 30 years ago, interest rates are also far lower. According to StatsCan, the conventional 5-year mortgage rate back in 1990 was over 13%. That would give borrowers far less breathing room in the event of a financial crisis. So what will it take to see a potential housing crash in 2021? A nationwide housing crash would require a financial calamity. Think of the US back in 2008, one that threatens the livelihoods and mortgages of many of the country's homeowners, forcing tens and thousands of them spread across every major Canadian real estate market to sell their homes simultaneously, thereby dragging down the home values in each Canadian real estate market. Those values would then be brought low enough that homeowners hanging onto their properties would see their existing equity wiped out, and then they would be forced to sell in a tanking market. Having said that, the current economic environment of ultra-low interest rates continues to protect homeowners from delinquencies, while the rebound in immigration and employment will only help the economy recover in 2021 from COVID. But there is no doubt that the Canadian housing market is on fire, and there doesn't seem to be anything available that's going to put out that fire. Many economists are warning that Canada is playing with fire right now, and that could potentially mean that the housing bubble is getting ready to burst. Many Canadians have been forced to stay at home and work due to the pandemic. They want larger living spaces to accommodate their needs. However, many homeowners are reluctant to put their property on the market. The lack of supply and insatiable demand for housing has turned the market into a bubble, one that continues to defy all logic. Here in Canada, many homeowners can get a mortgage rate around 1.5%. If that 1.5% fixed mortgage rate goes up to 3.5%, your mortgage payment all of a sudden goes up 30%. So what does that even mean? Well, think about this. Is there enough buffer room in today's wages to sustain a 30% increase in mortgage payments? Canada had mortgages of 3.5% not too long ago. Back in 2007, the mortgage rate was around 6%. If your mortgage rate goes up from 1.5% to, let's say, 5.5%, that means your monthly mortgage payment goes up over 60%. And if that mortgage rate goes up to 7.5%, your mortgage payment has almost doubled. Canadians today are forced to stretch their budget just to be able to buy a home at 1.5%. So having said all that, it's not going to take much of an increase to bring down this house of cards. When a bubble becomes so massive, it doesn't take much to set off something major. This can be really troubling. What happens in 5 years when interest rates go to 3.5%, 4.5%, 5.5%? Canadians will have to pay a lot more just to maintain their houses, especially if you have made a recent purchase by stretching your budget to the absolute maximum. This is a worrying situation. If the housing market takes a turn for the worse, and you can no longer afford your monthly mortgage payment, no one else is going to be able to buy that property off you. This then creates a downward pressure on prices when people need to sell, but there are no buyers. When people are expecting the kind of unsustainable price increases we are seeing the headlines today go on indefinitely, this only further inflates the bubble and makes it all that much more dangerous. If you're wondering, what about all those people on the sidelines that are waiting to buy homes if the prices go down? Surely there has to be enough demand to stop any kind of price correction waiting on the sidelines. Here's the thing. If you can buy for less in 6 months, you're going to wait 6 months. People will wait and wait when the prices start to go down. And when that buying pool disappears, this is when panic selling starts to settle in. But this time, it's different, right? Canada's housing market is indeed flush with cash right now. The national average selling price hit an all-time record of just under $680,000 back in February. This was a 25% year-over-year increase. While there is a perception that high prices are only a problem in the big cities like Toronto and Vancouver, sales are booming just about everywhere, with bully offers becoming the norm. So going back to that original thought, how likely is a Canadian housing market crash in 2021? The way I see it, there are potentially two possible scenarios that could lead to a market crash. One, there's a spike in mortgage rates. And if you're wondering about mortgage rates, I recently did a video that did a deep dive into where the mortgage rates are headed. So be sure to check that out. Two, there is a significant tightening of housing policy. Rising interest rates could also lead to a supply shock if Canadian homeowners, unable to make their monthly mortgage payments, decide to sell their homes instead of defaulting on their loans. A sudden surge in supply could force many sellers to lower their asking prices, leading to a housing crash. The other possibility, if a housing crash doesn't happen, is that housing price growth will slow to below household income growth. And this could potentially happen at least for the next decade. In this scenario, housing prices should still remain within household borrowing capacities, even though potential mortgage rates could be rising. This scenario would be considered a reversion to the mean, where housing increases are more in line with wages. With housing going up so much more today than income, this reversion will cause the next growth in housing to be well below wage growth. Going back to last year on this time, there was plenty of talk that Canada's housing market was in deep, deep trouble. Real estate prices have been going up higher and higher for the last several years, and it seemed like that bubble was about to burst due to the pressure of COVID-19. Even CMHC predicted that there would be between a 9 to 18% housing correction and that the market would start to recover by the summer of 2021. If you recall, I did a video on my channel where the UBS Global Real Estate Bubble Index for 2020 indicated that Toronto, as the only North American city at the risk of being in bubble territory. Despite all the warnings and the dangers of a major corrections, real estate investors did not hold back. Fueled by historically low interest rates, more time spent at home, and government stimulus payments, housing activity only picked up. And this leads us to today, where housing prices are still out of control, and the dangers of a bubble are still relevant. One practice that really needs to end in Canada is blind bidding. This could potentially be one factor to at least help tame the housing market. And if you don't know what blind bidding is, let's say you put an offer of $100K over asking on a home. Later you find out that you were outbid by over $250K. That person who ended up paying $250K over really ended up overpaying for that home because they don't know what the other offers are. This artificially inflates housing prices. The concept of blind bidding has become more and more common in Canada and has concerned many economists, especially as the housing market is overheating and becoming more and more unsustainable. Instead of blind bidding, you can do a potential auction process, one that is a lot more transparent and open to all bidders. In Australia, one of the methods of home sales includes an auction process, where you set up an auction outside the home on a predetermined date. Under this method, potential home buyers can see who else is bidding and exactly how much they're bidding. The problem with Canada is that buyers are getting a sense that they may never own a home if they don't act now, which is only adding fuel to the fire. Just in Ottawa recently, a couple lost out on their dream home despite offering over $400K over the asking price. At some point, the activity has to slow down. It's so unsustainable what we're seeing today. Listing prices have become irrelevant today. You start off with the best of intentions, thinking that you are not going to overpay, or you're not going to overbid by $100K. But after your 6th or 7th loss, you realize that everyone else is doing it. And at that point, you just want the process to end. To try and slow things down, some economists have suggested that the government start taxing the profit on home sales, even for primary residences, or start raising the minimum requirements for a down payment, while others believe that the government should focus more on housing projects that will add to the supply side of the equation. It's absolutely critical that all levels of government address the supply side of the equation and bring new housing across the spectrum, whether it's rental, vertical, low density, Doesn't matter what it is, just add to the supply as quickly as possible. Trying to tackle the demand side by adding in taxes may not get to the root of the issue and may bring unintended consequences. It also puts financial plans and financial security at risk for millions of Canadians. It could possibly reduce housing supply even further by discouraging others not to sell their homes. And this could make matters much, much worse. Interested in easy money? I have links to promo codes in the description of this video for various discounts and sign-up bonuses. So please be sure to take advantage of those offers as they help directly support the channel. Do you have questions for me? Feedback on this video, or maybe you have ideas on future content? Let me know in the comments below. That's it for this video. I'll catch you guys in the next one.